Right, good morning everybody, and a very warm welcome to our 26th Women in Sectional Title webinar. It's really great to have you all here. I'd like to introduce you to my colleague. This is Yvonne Attia. Yvonne came with me to a conference that was recently held. I would really love to also share the notes after this webinar with you. We're going to take you through some notes just now, but first of all, to say, just yesterday, a trustee friend of mine gave me a call and said, is it compulsory for managing agents to register with NAMA? And is it compulsory to have a managing agent who is registered with NAMA? And unfortunately, I had to say to her, look, it's not compulsory. But at the same time, I regaled her with the whole professionalism lecture and told her that any agent, in my view, at this moment, should be registered with NAMA. I think it's a value add to your clients, and I think it's certainly a value add to our industry. With NAMA, you've got professionalizing the industry at the moment, you've got upskilling of portfolio managers, and also you've got NAMA really working hard with all the relevant role players to make this industry a much better place to work in and to operate in. So yes, I think that's the message that we all need to send out. Thank you today again to all of our sponsors. We appreciate it so much. ZFIN, Meeting Pal, KF Octagon, BCM Track, Sectional Title Solutions, and We Connect You. Women in Sectional Title, as an organization, we were lucky enough this time at the national conference to have an exhibition stand, and we really got so much traction. We gained so much traction from that stand. People came to us. We got thanked a lot by a lot of you. We saw many people at the NAMA conference, and it was fantastic to work with you. And yes, Marion, look, at the end of the day, at this stage, NAMA isn't really there to deal with recalcitrant kind of members who are being obstructive or who are, are doing things that they're not supposed to do. And I think that's a question that comes up quite a bit. But going forward, there may be the opportunity for NAMA to look at that. And I think let's really start with all these learnings. The National Conference of Managing Agents took place on the 12th to the 14th of October this year. And that was the 6th national conference. So, I mean, that was an amazing place to work. We saw people from Durban, from Cape Town, and I'd really like to share with you at this stage a presentation that we put together with all the learnings. So I'm just going to ask Lisa to just share the screen now, if you can. Get onto that. Maybe I can just do that. I've done it. Okay. All right. So one of the first things that came up in the presentation was an introduction where we were told by Guy Panzergroh from the National Association of Managing Agents that this has really been a growth from acorn to oak. We're talking about sectional title. 68.3% of our sectional title complexes are in urban areas. 31% are in our rural areas. At the moment, we're looking at approximately 56,000 sectional title schemes, 3,000 homeowners associations. Look at this, 29,264 schemes that are registered with the Community Scheme Ombud Service, and 11 billion rand in levies collected. 20,000 of the schemes that are registered so far are actually paying the CSOS levies. 70% of insurance claims are geyser related. That was something that was quite interesting, and I think we're going to be dealing with insurance in one of our CSOS webinars coming up. We also spoke about at the webinar generalist to specialist. Education and training is obviously vitally important You've got to add value and knowledge to anything that you do. And we've got to communicate the correct information to people out there. And I think there were 2 courses that came up within the conference, which I'd like to just place on record here. Of course, it's a nuts and bolts course from the Department of Construction Economics at the University of Pretoria, and Vita Wilkins was the speaker here. There are 21 lectures aimed at owners, trustees, and occupiers of sectional title schemes to empower them with a clear understanding of what it implies to live in a sectional title scheme, and therefore why management of the scheme is so important. Then you've also got an introductory guide for sectional title owners, which is a Prax online course, and I think that's really valuable. Yvonne, you went online already to look into that. You went online already to look into that. Tell us a little bit about it.
I did. It looks very, very interesting. It's an online course. It's very user-friendly. The link is over there. If you just follow the link on the PowerPoint presentation, you'll be able to go on and you can proceed with the course if you would like.
Thank you. Thank you. And obviously, we've got to set standards. Legislation and regulatory bodies such as NAMA are important to get that bar high. And that's why, you know, so many managing agents keep saying, well, yeah, what's it for? What is the benefit to me? They're huge benefits. At the end of the day, this National Association of Managing Agents conference was hugely beneficial just to be there. So professionalizing the industry, standardizing qualifications for managing agents. We also know that NAMA is in consultation with the CSOS and the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority to develop a qualification for portfolio managers. And Yvonne and I were actually just talking about the fact that NAMA and the CSOS need to get involved with things that are really important to all of us. Things like developers. I mean, you were interested to know that developers are excluded from CSOS. And I think that's what we need to look at doing. Also, homeowners associations. Homeowners associations, there's been discussion that homeowners associations should have a separate act. When is that going to happen? I mean, at the end of the day, it's complicated. We were talking, it's complicated. So I think we need to look at professionalizing both homeowners associations and developers within our industry. Nick Mallett then came on to talk to us. He was fantastic. I must say, was a great speaker. He had us in hysterics with certain of his stories about his time in rugby. But for us, I think what we took out of this, the learnings we took out of this, was for somebody to trust you, you need to be competent in what you do. You've got to be a good communicator so that you have the ability to pass on information. You've got to be able to connect with people so that you know what their strengths are and how they can contribute and improve your team. Also, be consistent in your behavior, regardless as to whether the circumstances are favorable or unfavorable. And out of this talk, by the way, that consistency came up time and time again. Consistency is everything. You can't be good one day and then change and, you know, not care the next day. Show good character in all situations. Something important. Right. The nature of the adjudications and the appeals against CSOS adjudication orders. Sorry, this was an appeals part of the conference that came up. What we're wanting to do, because of the really good content of that appeals lecture, is to say that the next webinar that we do in November is going to answer all your questions asked by you last webinar on how to successfully lodge a CSOS application. Excuse me. And then also to deal with appeals. I'm sorry, sure. I'm so sorry. Bit of bad food. Right, we're going to take this over.
Okay, so this talk was about preparing for the CSOS mediation. It was very much based on the last event we had, how to successfully lodge a CSOS application. So very much of what we discussed at the last webinar formed the subject matter of this talk. But what is so important, I think, and it was very much stressed, was the importance of not bypassing the CSOS in cases where it has jurisdiction. And over there, we've listed 2 cases, one being a 2021 judgment and another being a 2022 judgment, which speaks about this importance. And what we've done over there is we've taken an excerpt from the body corporate of the Toronto Sectional Title Scheme judgment, paragraph 19, where the acting Judge Carter says, in applying the above legal guidance to the present case, I am of the view that this matter should never have been brought before this court as first instance. This is underscored by the fact that the urgency in the matter was rejected by Pangaka, acting judge referred above. There are no exceptional circumstances pertaining to this matter, but rather issues that fall squarely within the ambit of the Ombud, that can and would have been expeditiously dealt with at no cost, as the employer of legal representatives is not permitted. So I think the importance here is it's so important to ascertain whether the matter you're dealing with falls within the jurisdiction of the CSOS or not. And if it does, you have to approach the CSOS. You cannot bypass the CSOS and go to a court because the judge is going to throw it out, and very often with costs.
Thanks so much, Yvonne. I've got a very bad throat this morning. That's why Yvonne's sitting next to me to take over. We're now going to talk about transformation strategies.
Okay. So this was a very, very interesting talk. It was with the chief ombud and with a few of the employees at the CSOS. And what this was about was the various transformation strategies. So how this panel discussion worked was that we discussed 3 different types of transformation within the CSOS. The first one being demographic transformation, the second being technological transformation, and the third being legislative transformation. So in terms of demographic transformation, the CSOS has to abide by the medium-term strategic framework, which was introduced by government. This is a 5-year plan that is being implemented to achieve demographic transformation. Quite interestingly here, the CSOS has a selected panel of executive managing agents who they refer to bodies corporate when they are unsuccessful in appointing them by way of a special resolution themselves. So over here, if a body corporate is unable to appoint an executive managing agent by way of a special resolution themselves, they can then approach the CSOS, who then has a selection panel of executive managing agents that they can refer to the body's corporate. And quite interestingly enough, they are very much expanding on this project, and they are going to be appointing a further 25 executive managing agents to sit on the panel within the course of the next year. And they do intend on expanding and expanding over the years. Very interestingly here, there was a huge debate about the issue of demographic transformation within managing agents. And the chief ombud did say that in his view, it's likely that government will impose transformation measures on managing agents to make them more inclusive if the owners of the managing agents do not actually take the ball, into their own court and implement the transformation measures that are necessary to align with demographic transformation strategies within South Africa. Then technological transformation. Very excitingly, CSOS is going to be launching CSOS Connect in March 2023 to enhance user and customer excellence. So what's going to be able to happen is that schemes are going to be able to register online, and you're going to be able to pay your CSOS levy online. In order to make sure that the process runs smoothly, they are going to do a pilot program with managing agents and trustees before the launch in March 2023, so that it's fully up and running in March 2023. And then in terms of legislative transformation, so they intend on amending Section 57 of the CSOS Act to allow for an internal process of appeal at CSOS first, provided that both parties agree before approaching a court with competent jurisdiction. So here, what they intend on doing is that instead of going immediately to a court with competent jurisdiction, once you have received an adjudication order, provided that both parties agree, CSOS will first conduct an internal process of appeal. You can appeal the adjudication order at CSOS first before you approach the court.
Sorry, I think, Yvonne, I think that is one of the biggest changes and one of the most exciting ones that I saw definitely at this conference. Okay, you can carry on. You're doing very well.
Okay. So the next talk was very much based on compliance. And I think also this was very much stressed throughout the NAMA conference, the importance of compliance. So obviously, as we all know, non-compliance leads to unhappy owners, non-payment of levies, ultimately the collapse of a scheme, and actually also the loss of the property value. So how do you ensure compliance? How do you maximize compliance? You create a process flow with well-defined policies and procedures. You use flow diagrams with steps and time periods in which steps must be complied with. So over here, it was quite interesting. What they did was they showed us a calendar. And some of these managing agents are actually plotting what they're doing within a scheme on an annual basis. So they will say, you know, step one, you need to do this, and it needs to be complied with in this time period, so that you actually know exactly what is happening within a scheme on an annual basis. And it becomes so easy to then comply with that and to maintain consistency and to continue to follow up in this regard. So that speaks to my next point. It flows in. Employ compliance specialists who can install software to assist with monitoring and implementing compliance mechanisms. As I've just said to you, the compliance calendar. You plot all the steps and the deadlines on the calendar for the year for a scheme. Trustees are responsible for ensuring compliance. So the relationship between the trustee and the managing agent is like a master and a servant, or a shepherd and a sheep. I think it's been stressed in many webinars that the managing agent is an agent. The obligation is on the trustee to be able to instruct the managing agent as to what needs to be done. The trustee is the master, the managing agent is the servant. The trustee is the shepherd, the managing agent are the sheep, if that makes sense. Then, quite interestingly, they spoke about how you're seeing a compliance responsibility shifting to also include managing agents. When we had the discussion on the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority, which was implemented on the 1st of February 2022, and which repealed the Estate Agency Affairs Act, it is vital that managing agents are obligated to register with the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority and be in possession of a valid Fidelity Fund certificate. We're going to explore this a little bit later on in the webinar, but it is so important that this is actually happening. Any person is able to lay a complaint at the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority about a managing agent. And an inspector from the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority can in fact go and inspect the premises of the managing agent without a search warrant. This is provided for in Section 25 of the Act, to request sight of the Fidelity Fund certificate and any book, record, or document within the possession of the managing agent. So it is so vital that managing agents have their ducks in a row, they have all their books, their records, their documents up to date, and their Fidelity Fund certificates in place. Because if you don't, you're going to be subject to fines. And these fines are actually in line with the magistrates' court. They're very much aligned with, what courts would actually fine. And then the possibility of implementation of professional contracts for managing agents. So this is on the cards, that managing agents will actually be held personally liable if they don't perform in accordance with a certain skill level. So these professional contracts is definitely on the cards, and it will probably be implemented soon. Okay, so as Marina indicated over here, the issue of insurance, we are going to do a webinar on this because it is so important. But just a few introductory comments. So it is so important for trustees to carefully read the insurance agreement with your insurer and ascertain what are the exclusions. So what you are not covered for. Ensuring that risk surveys are conducted in respect of the scheme on a regular basis to identify, plan, measure, and assess the risk. Very important to constantly be doing risk surveys and constantly be liaising with your insurance company so that you know you are adequately insured. Because you are never certain as to what could happen. I mean, this talk, the speaker was actually talking about the KwaZulu-Natal floods and was saying that they found so many cases whereby stormwater drains, for example, in schemes, they were blocked. And that actually caused huge problems with the flood. So you never know when an unexpected event can happen. It's so important to be adequately prepared for that. And ensuring that the scheme is properly maintained on a regular basis. Very important to make sure that you maintain your scheme in respect of all the different aspects, because the insurance is not going to pay out if it's established that damage was ensued as a result of lack of maintenance. Okay, so this talk was very much based on financial stability, and the subject point of this talk was the 10-year maintenance, repair and replacement plan, which is actually obligatory for schemes to have. So just a few points about this. Prevention is always better than cure. You need to make sure that you have a 10-year maintenance, repair and replacement plan, which is properly drawn up. And it's not okay to just draw up your 10-year maintenance, repair and replacement plan and then, leave it in the drawer. You need to actually make sure that it's continuously being fine-tuned and updated so that you know that there are sufficient funds to cover the planned maintenance within the scheme. Just to highlight this again, which I'm sure all of you know, it's very important to ensure that the body corporate has separate bank accounts, kept for reserve funds, for example, your painting, your security upgrade, your solar systems, which is becoming a big thing now with the load shedding, roof replacements and waterproofing, and then one for your admin funds. So that would be routine costs, garden service, swimming pool cleaning, repairing gate, motor, etc. One, if I can say it was like a pearl of wisdom that came out of this talk, was a piece of advice was, before thinking of raising a special levy or taking out a loan, if you can avoid it, consider splitting a maintenance expense within your maintenance, repair and replacement plan into a few years first. So for example, as it says there, if you need to paint your entire scheme and you don't have, it's going to adversely impact on the finances of the scheme, so you won't be able to cover your planned maintenance, then possibly think about splitting it into 2 years. So you paint in 2024 and 2025 as opposed to everything done in 2024.
And I think, Yvonne, actually yesterday we had a client who came in about a wall, boundary wall, the maintenance of a boundary wall. And if they had taken this advice a couple of years ago, I mean, this was a complex that was built in 1976. So if they'd taken that advice and done this, ensured that this whole maintenance expense was over a couple of years, they wouldn't be facing a 750,000 Rand boundary wall that 2 complexes have to pay. Now the one scheme is saying, no, they don't want to pay.
And they don't have the money, and they were indicating that they just, they don't have the money because they've used up their money. So now they're going to have to raise a special levy.
Absolutely. All right, carry on. You carry on.
Okay. So this talk was very, very interesting Again, some statistics. So we start off with the average pricing for managing agents within various provinces in South Africa. So the price per unit for the services of a managing agent in Pretoria is 91 Rand a unit. In Johannesburg, 104 Rand a unit. In KwaZulu-Natal, 111 Rand a unit. And in Cape Town, 122 Rand a unit. So the national average per unit for the services of a managing agent is 106 Rand. They've seen a 4% increase in these prices over a 10-year period. But what's here quite interesting is that the effort that it takes for a managing agent to deliver their service is 170 Rand per unit. So you can see that the effort that it takes for the managing agent to deliver the service is actually greater than the price for managing agents per unit, the national average, which is 106 Rand. Now, something also very interesting here is there's been a growth of 20.3% of people who are willing to pay 140 to 200 Rand per unit for the services of a managing agent, and only a growth of 12.3% of people who are willing to pay 106 Rand per unit. So what this shows us is that people are actually willing to pay more than the national average per unit for the services of a managing agent. They want to pay, but they want to pay for efficient, for consistent, and for good services. So the first thing we can draw from the conclusions from the statistics I've just spoken about is that managing agents can't give what they don't have. If they're not getting paid adequately for the services that they deliver, we can't expect them to deliver those services. But then, as I've just spoken about, at the same time, trustees are actually willing to pay managing agents more than what the national price is per unit, but they obviously want value for their money. How do we get more trustees wanting to pay more for the services of the managing agents so that the managing agents are actually in a position to deliver these services? Again, as Marina spoke about earlier, this importance of consistency and this importance of efficiently delivering the services. So efficiency, how do you do that? As we've spoken about previously, for example, you employ software specialists to be able to have these calendars that allows you to plot, on an annual basis, what steps you have to do for a scheme and the time periods in which you have to do that, because that is going to minimize a lot of the managing agent's work. Report to the trustees on the services you have rendered, constantly reporting, updating, so that trustees know that you're actually working on their scheme. Create a professional and standardized meeting approach. We're very fortunate that with COVID, there are so many different ways in which you can meet, whether that's online or whether that's in person. It's for the managing agent to assess as to what the nature of the matter is, whether it would be better to do it in person or online. Ensuring that the portfolio manager is empowered by having all the data relating to the scheme at his or her disposal in an orderly manner. Again, speaking about, for example, the software issue we've just spoken about and that calendar, and putting the portfolio manager back into the driving seat. So important that the portfolio manager is completely in control of the schemes they are managing, of the data in relation to that, working alongside with the trustee to ensure that you have successful management of the scheme.
I really like that. And I think it was Dani from We Connect You. That was his talk, where he said, put the portfolio manager back into the driving seat. A very, very good talk as well, I must say. Okay, take us through transformation strategy. Okay. So this, as I was speaking about it a little bit earlier, this speaks about the Property Practitioners Regulatory Act and how this Property Practitioners Act, which is coming to place in, from the 1st of February 2022, there are a number of changes, especially in respect of managing agents. So firstly, there is no doubt
that managing agents are considered to be property practitioners. Because they are considered to be property practitioners, they are regulated in terms of this Act, and they have to be in possession of a valid Fidelity Fund certificate. Now, this Fidelity Fund certificate is valid for a 3-year period. If a trustee acts in the capacity of a managing agent and is remunerated for that, that trustee falls within the ambit of this Act and has to be in possession of a valid Fidelity Fund certificate. An administrator doesn't fall within the ambit of the Act because they take the instructions from court and not from the body corporate or trustees. Now, in order to ascertain or to determine whether or not a person falls within the ambit of this Act, you look at their job description. Does it involve performing a managing function and or conducting property transactions? Now, just on this particular point, Marina and I had a case, and it's on our desk at the moment, whereby there's a scheme and there's an individual who's been acting as a managing agent within the scheme for about 5 years now, administering the scheme, being the caretaker of the scheme. And what has actually happened is that she's not in possession of a valid Fidelity Fund certificate, but she's being remunerated by the body corporate. And one of the owners has actually got wind of this and has actually reported her to the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority. Now, we were in a hearing about, I'd say, a month ago. It was postponed, and now we hear the matters being heard again on the 2nd of December. And the problem is that this lady is now risking a huge fine. And this is what's happening. They made it very, very clear to us that they are really not taking any nonsense, and they are actually going to be imposing fines, and they are going after people who are not complying with the Act. So we really do urge you to make sure that as managing agents, you and the employees that need to be in possession of a valid Fidelity Fund certificate are. It's so, so important.
And also, not only are you looking at a fine, but also any remuneration that that person has received in respect of that job, they would also be liable to pay back. So yeah, not fun, I must say. We're a bit nervous about the 2nd of December case.
Yeah, Section 4 of the Act deals with exemptions. So being exempt from this Act applying to you. If you have the opinion that the Act doesn't apply to you or to some of your employees, then you would need to apply for an exemption in terms of Section 4. Don't assume that the Act doesn't apply to you. They made this clear. Don't assume, rather make an application in terms of Section 4 to see whether or not the exemption is going to be granted. So be safe rather than sorry. Prevent rather than having to cure a problem like we are currently facing with this matter that we're facing. So obviously you can either register with the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority as an individual or as a group. Quite interestingly here, and flowing from the educational aspect that we spoke about at the beginning of this webinar, what the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority is going to do is they are consulting with all the players that they are actually regulating, and they're going to finalize the educational requirements for every single role player. So what they're going to do is they're going to consult with the managing agent industry to finalize the educational requirements that managing agents are going to have to comply with in order to create a benchmark. And this is going to come into effect shortly. So the educational requirements in terms of the Act currently don't have application, but they will shortly. So it's important that we carry on following up and keeping abreast with this aspect. Then in terms of Section 58B of the Act, a property practitioner may not enter into an arrangement, formally or informally, whereby a consumer is obliged or encouraged to use a particular service provider, including an attorney to render any service or ancillary service in respect of any transaction of which that property practitioner was the effective cause. But it was made very clear during this panel discussion that this only applies to estate agents. So this doesn't apply to managing agents, and you can obviously, make certain, referrals, but as Marina made it very clear in her talk at the NAMA conference, do it with integrity. So for example, give somebody 3 quotations as opposed to 1 and assume that, you have this particular service provider that you are working alongside.
And Yvonne, I thought at the talk that all the managing agents were going to stand up and applaud. They were so happy because this has caused quite a bit of consternation. I mean, you actually guide where the body corporate goes with regard to contractors, whether formal or informal contractors. You're the ones who are saying this guy was good at the last one, so let him, paint the building. So that was really causing a lot of worry. And I think that was great news for all of you.
And then lastly, we stress this. It's just so fundamental that you're up to date with this act, that you are complying with it, because as we said, there are penalties and they are actually being imposed fast and furiously. And then over there are some pictures from the NAMA conference. On the left over there, that was Marina giving her talk. And then there are a few pictures of the women in sectional title stand.
Yeah, and then we've got Serena and Annette as well, who are on the committee. Thank you, ladies, so much for helping. And I think we really put together a wonderful stand, and I've made more and more people aware of our Women in Sectional Title initiative. I just wanted to find out now, would there be any questions that somebody would like to ask? And maybe I could ask Serena and Annette also to just tell us which were their parts of this conference, what they were the happiest to learn.
Yeah, Marina, I found all of the talk so interesting, but I think one of the things I found the most interesting as a principal of a property management firm, but also as a portfolio manager, is that we sell ourselves short so often. I think the thread that came through is how many managing agents felt abused, how many of them felt that they weren't respected, their time wasn't respected, and that they were expected to be a master of everything. And I think to professionalize the industry is critical. And once we start treating ourselves as professional and value what we are able to impart to our clients, they will start valuing that the same. And I think a lot of the managing agent firms as well, we need to stop undercutting each other, because we can't just keep going cheaper and cheaper because we want the business and it's about pricing, because ultimately that's going to result in a service level being compromised. You can't give, like you said, if you don't have that. And I think one of the things that I also learned a lot is that going back to the very first talk that I ever did, you teach people how to treat you. So if you are going to feel abused or that you feel disrespected or whatever, it's up to the managing agent to feel confident enough to say, please, can you rather talk to me in a more respectful tone? I'm trying to help you, and please understand that, this is what I'm trying to say. So in other words, we can't come back with attitude and expect that the trustees are going to swallow that. We've got to teach them how to treat us. And also people don't value what they don't pay for. So I think going back to the weekly due talk as well was fascinating, that those that are growing faster are actually those that are charging a little bit more as to what they're worth. So yeah, that's what I learned.
Very much so, absolutely, Serena. And we also spoke at one stage within the conference about the contract your expectations, trustees' expectations have to be concretized in that managing agency contract. And I think with us here, we're definitely going to be looking at managing agency contracts. And I was quite excited by that whole forming one professional contract that really can be spread around the industry. Annette, do you have anything to add? No, I don't think so. Okay.
I just
there you are. There you are.
connected. Can you just repeat the question again? Sorry.
Do you have anything to add? Annette, did you enjoy the conference? I see you were.
Yes, I enjoyed it immensely.
Annette
Learned
actually,
a lot.
I must just tell you guys, Annette actually got a prize for bringing the most participants to the NAMA conference. So well done on that.
Thank you. No, I found it very interesting, quite informative, and I think all my team enjoyed the experience, and they all are very happy with what they learned, and I know they're all tuned in at the moment listening to the report back.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate all the managing agents that came. Is there anybody else who would like to raise something at this point? Please do so. You're most welcome. No.
Hi, sorry. Can you hear me?
Please.
Marina?
Well, I can hear you.
Hi, it's Joanne. I'm an owner in Sectional Title. We have met previously. I'm not sure who the last party that spoke, but I think her comment that the industry needs to be put on a level where it is actually professionalization of the industry is very important, and possibly where MAs are regulated. And Ms. Bailey made a very important comment that not all MAs are made the same or offer the same. And I think that is important, that regulations should require that MAs do what is required in the Sectional Title Schemes Management Act and offer that service to BC members, not just to the trustees. It is our levy that pay for the managing agents. And I think a lot of unhappiness comes from ignorance on the owner's part. And if managing agents can be regulated to actually inform or advise owners, and in that way educate owners to what their, not just their rights are, but more so their responsibilities. Owners, I myself was very, very ignorant of the sectional title regulations and what my responsibilities are as an owner, and have since unfortunately hit a big loggerhead, not just with trustees, but with managing agent not getting documents on the scheme, trying to have the scheme rectified and follow regulations. So it's a huge problem where owners do not understand what sectional title living actually is. And a lot of trustees are hesitant or even ignorant themselves, and managing agents as the professionals in the industry carry a huge, responsibility, but it's not regulated now. And they are the professionals, and if they can actually enhance the whole living experience by, helping owners understand what their rights and responsibilities are.
Yes, absolutely, quite right. Thank you for putting it so succinctly. We always talk about managing agents as having so much on their plates because a lot of them, especially the portfolio managers, have got a lot of buildings to deal with. We call them psychologists, dragon slayers, plumbers, construction workers, whatever. So there's got to be an understanding, I suppose, from both sides. And therein lies the whole point about expectation levels on both sides. Is there anybody else? Yeah.
Sorry, the remuneration needs to be applied, and we as owners need to understand that, it's a sad saying to say you pay for what you get, or you get for what you pay. We need to understand that these are professionals in this industry. We need to understand that they can help us understand and educate us in the industry and guide us to a better sectional title living. And with that, I think remuneration has to be accordingly as well.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So I think what we can say is that the National Association of Managing Agents managed to piece together a comprehensive picture of the essential aspects contributing to a more professional business, We were privileged to attend that conference. We're looking forward to the next one. We always try to work out where the next one's going to be. I think it was Port Elizabeth 3 years ago. It's Cape Town. We might have it again in Joburg. We're not sure. But one thing is for sure, that we'll definitely be there. Women in Sectional Title is growing, and we look forward to learning a lot more about all these things. And again, thank you to our sponsors who were with us there at the NAMA conference. Most of them did a great job. Many of them were speakers. And yes, spread the word. I believe, and I know that many of you do believe, that it's worthwhile to join NAMA and encourage others to join them too. So thank you so much. And we'll see you in November to answer the 35 questions that were at our last webinar, Women in Sectional Title webinar. 35 questions came up, which we're going to answer for you about how to lodge your CSOS application successfully. And we'll also deal with the appeal process as well. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. And thank you for bearing with me. Yvonne, you saved my life today. Well done. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Sorry, by the way, I'm going to, this is a recording. This is a recording.